Let's see here. I have got my friend Dylan Bost on the show today. I'm so excited about this. Dylan is a legendary leader when it comes to authenticity. We have very similar paths for how we've kind of uh, taken our lives, where we've gone with it. And I really want to highlight the fact that we're going to be talking about when the conversation gets real. We're going to be talking about business failures today. We're going to be talking about book launches as well. We're going to be talking about what we're doing now with our companies. There are some amazing secrets of AI and what to use, how to use AI and how to use it super well that both of us are going to reveal in this process for every single one of you. But what's most important to me are the things that are often so unspoken in the world of visionary leadership, and the things that people don't feel as comfortable talking about. Both Dylan and I, we understand the value and the importance of showing behind the curtains, like what can be going on, what types of disruptions can you experience, and also what do you do to overcome that when you end up in those types of circumstances. So Dylan, again, thank you so much for joining me on Vision Pros Live today.
Thanks, Jackson. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, guys, Dylan and I met like most of my guests through a pre-show. We didn't know each other before we came in. We had a pretty hard and real conversation about where things have gone for our companies, what types of life challenges we've had to overcome. I want to let him recapitulate that because nobody can put that better into words than what Dylan is up to. So, Dylan, feel free to kind of fire hose us or just let us know what happened with the past company and what you realize, what do you got going on now, family, life circumstances, where you live, etc. Whatever you want to reveal. We'll just start with an open book.
Yeah, it's funny, Jackson. That question, I get that asked a lot, and I find the answer is evolving. I mean, it's the same answer, but it's interesting as we start to heal and talk more from the status of a scar, right, than a wound. I find I thought I was to a place, and now I realize I'm to a whole nother place. It's like what I realize now, right? That so this time in my life, in a nutshell, it's probably about 40 years old. Beautiful, successful business, everything great on paper, right?
Yeah.
And had this existential question of why am I doing this? Like, you know, not realizing the value of although I could see the intrinsic value of what I did for other people, I didn't see what it was to me. And from the years after that, I developed this clarity about what the problem was. It was an alignment issue, right? I mean, so I think a lot of people maybe experience this. They're like, well, I'm making all the money, but I'm not happy. I
Mm.
don't experience joy. And so now 16 years later from that, right? What I realized is there was simply an alignment issue. I was doing beautiful things and I loved it. I mean, I actually enjoyed every day. So it wasn't that. Um, I was very disconnected from my family because work does this to us, right? We get out of school and we start to get the pats on the back. We get the money in the wallet. We get the cars and the houses and the things and the
Yes.
things and the things. And we're driven because those things provide us something that the people closest to us, we don't think that they give us that, but they do. We've just lost that connection from what that means, right? And I think that, and for me, I didn't grow up really with, my parents divorced at a young age when I was at a young age, and so I didn't have that kind of Leave It to Beaver household environment. I was loved, there's no doubt, and I don't want to undersell that. The reality was, though, I didn't have those tools that helped me to understand what really being a husband was, what being a father was. But man,
Sure.
I was really good at work, right?
Mm.
Could get the awards and do all the things, and I fit really well into kind of what maybe some people perceive as a high stress environment. Like, I'm really good at the figuring the things out. I'm super comfortable in that place of I don't know what today is, right? I mean, I love those moments, right? If I have to figure out a bunch of things, then I'm really comfortable. And so that led me down a path of honestly the kind of a downfall. I by
Mm.
myself, most likely, extinguished that business. And what did that look like? It ended in bankruptcy. It ended with, making a bunch of poor decisions, drinking too much. I
Mm.
haven't now had a drink in years. And
Congrats.
that level of clarity has provided me more than I ever thought it would. And not just from, I don't want to get too far off on that, but for anybody thinking about that, it's interesting because what the world paints, alcohol abuse as, it's not that it's not real, but there's a lot more to it. And so if
Yes.
anybody's interested in really exploring that, I can't tell you what kind of value that can bring in your life, because it actually enabled me to find who I was. Right. So,
Mm.
so after that kind of, let's call it that dark period, it really gained a lot of, time to investigate what I wanted out of life. So what that looked like is when I started to look at building a new business, it was definitely about what am I going to do and what's that look like. But that was a piece of it. A bigger piece is, what do I want my entire life to look like? How much time do I want for myself? How much time do I want for my children, for my wife, for my extended family? And really trying to integrate that into something where, and it's worked out well. And now I run 3 different businesses, and I'm traveling, for instance, this week, and I'm able to shift between those 2 things and find, a flow, instead of having to have business be, 8 hours a day in a room someplace that's far removed from those other areas. And it's really
Yes.
provided, a lot of joy, for not just me, but a lot of time that I wouldn't normally have had with my family.
Absolutely. And that is one of those hidden truths. There's pros and cons on it too, my friends. I would say the pros far, far outweigh the cons. But one of the realities, and I grew up, I shouldn't say grew up. I grew up as an adult, right? As a father, always working from home from day one
Mhm.
with my children. And
Mm.
when your child is knocking on your door and crying and wants to play, and you have no separation from that, that's a different type of separation anxiety that exists for both parties. And you got to learn, like,
Yeah.
oh boy, what do I, now that I don't go to work and I'm always available, how do I put new boundaries in place with my children, with my wife, etc.? Like those are challenges that exist too. So those of you who are looking at the nomadic lifestyle or continuing to work from home, and how that can play out for your business world, it's a fun ride. I'll say that. There's a couple of things that you shared in there, Dylan, that I want to hit on. One, you talked about from operating from the place of the scar rather than operating from the place in the open wound. That's just something I hope people marinate on too, and maybe even do some AI digging for yourself and figure out, what does that look like for me and my life. And then two, you talked about this aspect of not knowing about, like, what's it like to be a husband. And man, I have failed that twice
Mm.
already. And so, and I share that almost, I want to say humbly and vulnerably, for those of you listening in too, and recognizing as well, like, you're not alone in these circumstances, whether you've failed or whether you feel like you're failing, or you've got opportunities to learn, right? Fail acronym, first attempt in learning. I needed more than one. So mine is SAIL, second attempt in learning still. All right. But what I want to key in on that is, I was raised by my mom and 5 older sisters too. There wasn't a male presence in our
Mm.
house. I learned how to be a great husband by learning to be a great wife, if you will.
Hmm. Yep.
And so now, if you have two people that are doing the same thing, like, there's going to be
Mm.
conflict
Yep.
involved in that too. So again, there may not be a manual for it, but those of you listening in, I find that it's very helpful too to find, like, I need somebody who understands how to help me be the best husband I can be, how to help me to be the best father that I can be. But I also need other mentors and guides in my life that know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Because if you don't have somebody who understands those three dynamics by your side, it is very hard for them to guide you and help you see around the corners of the mountains that you may not have passed through yet. So, lastly, way to claim too. You did your bankruptcy by yourself, right?
Yeah.
What I gather out of that is you're taking ownership for what's going
Yeah.
on in your life, and that's another phenomenal opportunity as business owners, as visionaries. How do we make sure that we don't fall into burn victim mentality with the things that come our way? So we're going to come back. We're going to dive in deeper into what type of, let's not even call it advice, but what has worked for Dylan in this process. We're also going to talk quite a bit about, I shouldn't say quite a bit, but enough about Sunny HQ for you guys to understand this guy builds lightning fast websites
Mm.
that are super cool. And he understands things about AI, where when I have an AI question, I will throw it out when Dylan and I don't meet a lot one-on-one, but we go to a certain mastermind and certain things I'll direct, knowing that Dylan's going to wrap around and talk about his side of things. And I'm always watching, how does he bake his cakes as a chef? Like maybe I can get him to come and celebrate First Class Business as his fourth business to be working on and with. And I'm always recruiting him. He knows that. But guys, every chance you have the opportunity to engage with an author that you respect, a business owner that you respect, there's so much opportunity to lean into abundance for that. And I hope you do the same thing with each of us. We're going to be right back and we'll dive in further into Dylan's story.
All right, welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We will be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, who needs to adjust his camera a little bit. Dylan, we both got to move our cameras up a little bit for that Instagram reel. So, whoa, that's like way zoomed in on me. Hello, Instagram. Can you see my pores? Just kidding. All right, sorry. Let's keep going. So with Vision Pros, right now we got Dylan on. This guy is one of the most authentic people who's came on our show in the last year, and we've had some amazing leaders, but there's just a depth about his personality. The fact that he also lives in Mexico with his family, the fact that he understands the importance of balance in addition to business growth. And I want to give you guys a couple of other resources, of course, as we get ready to gear up, but we're going to be talking really super authentic, real and raw today about the depths of business ownership and leadership that maybe don't get talked about hardly at all in other places. That's what I'm going to try to dig into. So before we do, though, we've got AI Mavericks up here in the top left corner. I am a member of AI Mavericks. I pay them to put them on my sponsorship reel. How weird is that? Well, I love to share with you guys what I really believe in. And I really do think that Austin Armstrong and Scott Simpson are phenomenal leaders. They're the types of AI people that play with AI in a way that I consider kind of dangerous and I won't do, but I certainly like to watch and see what are they up to and how are they doing this. It allows me to know that the people that I'm learning AI with and from are people who are aligned with my same types of ethical values. And that's also very important when it comes to how you use AI. Then there's our program, AI Marketplace, the AI Marketplace by First Class Business. Go to ai.firstclassbusiness.io/depth, DEPTH. That's our secret page. You're seeing the public page. I want you to know where the depth of our research comes from in building this. And I want you to be able to combine your authentic intelligence with your artificial intelligence. This is about how to use AI to be profitable and how to use AI to be productive. And we do have a free scholarship program as well in there. We don't want anybody left behind in the world of AI. I hope you join us on that. We're at 19 members currently. Once we get to 50, we'll be upping the price points as well for those who are going to be in it long term. But as I said, if you qualify for the grant process, which isn't hard, it's a matter of commitment and doing your part, then you get absolutely free access to this. Again, we want everybody to be able to participate and nobody left behind. And then we have the Water Project. The Water Project is not something that is ours, but it is something that I have supported since one of my team members a few years ago brought up that I should be paying attention to it. My friends, I've never been thirsty in my life. First time I heard about this was like, I don't really know if I can care too much about this. Not until really paying attention and looking at these kids and how, man, what would it be like if my kids had to get water from this type of a source or had to leave school to go get water? And when you donate to a specific project in the Water Project, you get to see the outcome of that project. It's one of the most transparent causes I've seen. There are millions of people who don't have access to this, much like some people in the world don't have access to AI or some people don't have access to air conditioning. But to not have access to water is one of the most humbling realities, and I hope that we can eradicate this experience by supporting what they're up to, other causes that are similar. Now, my last hope before we bring Dylan back on stage is if you know of another cause that you'd like to see us support, do us a favor right now, drop it in the comments. Let us take a look at that. I promise I will take a look at every single cause that comes across my radar for this. That way I can see what I can do to help support it further. You never know by sharing these causes with others what type of ripple effect you'll have for good. So let's make sure to dive in together. So again, as I get ready to bring Dylan back in, Dylan has built a creative agency that looks successful from every angle while something very different was true behind it. And we're going to be talking about getting honest. He got honest. He rebuilt his business, his leadership, and his life. Today, Dylan is the co-founder of Sunny HQ, a human-first, wicked-fast WordPress hosting and support platform trusted by 150 plus businesses, and he's the author of The 7 Mirrors, releasing later in 2026. Let's do our best to, with love, hold him accountable to that book launch as well. I know how difficult that can be to pull off. And so if you're somebody who leads people and you have ever carried something quietly while everything looked fine in the outside, and this is a conversation that I hope we can get real and raw and open with you guys about, we want to talk about what shifts when we stop performing in conversations and get honest about what is actually happening in our lives and work. Who better to lead the way with that than Dylan Bost? Dylan, welcome back to Vision Pros Live.
Yeah, man.
So leading with that thought of what does that even mean to shift from performing in conversations to you to being present, being real, being authentic as a leader?
I think it's and I think anybody that's real about this everyone suffers from this, right? Everyone suffers from trying to say the right thing. And I don't mean the politically correct thing. I mean, I think it's when we have those ideas that we want to bring forth, when we're in that meeting, whether you're a leader or whether you're one of the workers, right? It doesn't really matter. The same thing happens. I think a lot of really good leaders have become good at this, but there's still a level of performance that's there, right? There's still, and I suffered from this. It was, now I suffered from it, but I was also really lucky, right? I mean, I had a good knack for kind of being able to, and even before I knew what my intuition was, I could kind of tap into, I know where this is going. And I was really lucky the majority of the time. But when we start to tap into, though, how we feel about the given situation, right? And when we're okay with being vulnerable and making a mistake in a group, that's when the really good stuff happens, right? I mean, and I think that there are some really good, I think this does exist, right? I mean, I think there's some great, there's some great groups of people in different companies where that they're crushing this, right? Where they're okay, where, and a lot of people, I guess you're in these meetings and somebody says there are no stupid questions, right? Well, that's a great thing to say, but you really got to follow it up and foster that group, because you can say that, but still 90% of the people in the room are not going to say anything, right? Because they're afraid that their idea is going to be crushed. But we have to do that. We have to fail. I mean, I've only gotten to where I am today because I've failed miserably over and over and over again. And I'm not unusual in this, right? I mean, now I love this because more and more this is coming to the surface. More and more we hear this in environments where, like, oh, it's okay for those, for those people on that team to do that. Well, it's okay for me to. But that's where it really gets good, is if you allow yourself to completely put yourself out there. You're going to find in the instant, I would say, you don't have to wait for it to come back around. In an instant, you're going to see the results you get. You're going to see how that's accepted by people. And people want to see, I mean, more and more, I've talked to a number of people, even on podcasts and other marketing systems, where it's like, how many times, I'll ask the question to everyone out there. It's like, how many times are you seeing this, the reels that you follow, the people that you listen to? You don't want to hear all the successes. You want to hear what happened to them, because we need to connect with those people. Because in reality, none of us know what we're doing, right?
Yes.
We're the people that are smart, though, still are willing to do it. They're willing to go out there and to make the wrong step, and then to go, oh, okay, you know what? That was a screw up. I'm going to do it this way next time. And I think that's the thing. I think once we can really let go, because you can't, what I've found especially in the last few years, is like, I can't come up with the good idea being safe, right? It doesn't exist. I can come up with the okay idea, and maybe that's cool. But if you want that forward progress, you've got to be willing to make the mistake. You've got to be willing to go through the hard thing. I coach people a lot on this, right? It's like, I think that I was just talking to my wife the other day. She went through this situation where she went to visit her mom, and because her mom broke her arm, and she was going to be there for 3 weeks, and she was of course expressing some dismay of the situation, and I know it was difficult. And I said, here's the thing: right now is your opportunity, as you're going through this with your mom, to work on things with yourself, those things that trigger you about that situation, the hard things. Because what I've experienced is we can talk about, I love meditation. All right. I love these quiet moments. You can put yourself through the paces, but you never will learn more than during those times of hardship, whatever the hardship is. It could be, your travel, your airplane trip got canceled for weather or something, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be like some horrible thing, but the point I'm trying to make is when those things happen, that's when you have a little test and you get to see, how do you show up for that? Not to other people, that's secondary. How do you show up for yourself? Because that's what I try to dial in on too. It's like, I can be great for Jackson, right? Jackson can say something and I not like it, and I can smile and work through it. But the deeper thing is, how do I feel about that? Do I release what that is? Do I let that go in real time? Because if I do, then I don't do that again, right? I've essentially extinguished that one little issue that usually drives some bigger reaction later on. And I think so those are those powerful moments, is recognizing that in real time and going, oh yeah, I've got this hard talk with my boss or with a client. So how am I going to show up for that environment? How am I going to I'm not going to fake it. I'm not going to perform my way through it. I'm going to really though think about, take a deep breath. I'm going to think about what I feel about it, and I'm going to express myself as cleanly as I can. I'm going to hold tight to my boundaries. I'm going to listen, right? And I'm going to make sure we resolve it. But I'm going to really take that opportunity to work on what's happening inside me. Because then you start to open those things up and the world is yours. I mean, I say this is superpower, right? And I honestly believe this. The superpower is being able to be in the face of adversity, whatever kind, the little and the big, and being completely calm, right? I think it's better than flying, right? I really do. Because you know what, flying, I'm sure would be fantastic. But the reality is that's not going to save me from the asshole in traffic or the situation with my kids or the situation.
You can't avoid fights forever.
Right. Yeah. But if I am calm and allow myself those times, that skill is usable in literally every aspect of your life. It will propel you forward if you can build that skill.
Yes, I'm gonna study this out with you guys, my friends, because again, there's just so much knowledge, so much wisdom that you dropped right there, Dylan, that is so important to process. We started this episode, and I love that we talked about the stop performing in conversation, and you're right away, you're like, well, we all kind of do that sometimes. And I'm so glad you opened the door for that, because I could feel my own little imposter syndrome in the background saying, I'm teeing this question up, but I'm kind of performing on this podcast. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm already delivering something inauthentic here. But part of that is, and I thought of Stephen Bartlett and this picture I saw of him, and he posts lots of pictures like this, or his team does, and he's kind of curled up almost in fetal position against a wall with his head in his hands, right before going out on stage in front of 20,000 people probably. And he's so good about talking about how even, he who might look like Superman, is a very human being and has these challenges and feels so overwhelmed by what it is that he's doing and what the expectations of the world are on him. And so I almost forgot the name of my website while I'm doing that introduction. I haven't done a podcast in like 2 weeks. And so I'm sitting there like fumbling through my words, going through processes, hoping Maria Victoria is keeping up with my challenges, and going, I hope I can tie this back to authenticity, because that's the whole point. And so there's that going on. And then here you come and you validate my circumstance. And I appreciate that so much. And then you start talking about saying the right thing. And one of my books that I need to be able to carve the time out for my own development is a book called Say What You Mean. It's third on my reading list right now. And it's supposed to help with being able to communicate the right things, just like you said, not the necessary thing, but I don't remember exactly what you said about it, but I just remember feeling so aligned with what you shared on that, being vulnerable. And then these, I'm going through an addiction recovery program right now. And my addiction is feeling unworthy and inadequate.
Yep.
I've gotten down to the root of, I don't want to go for surface level things and things that I've been able to prepare on and progress. But at the end all, the root of all of it for me, I think it is, if I feel inadequate, I don't move.
Yeah.
Like I'm giving up on whatever
Yeah.
that is. And I can't be my best self if I allow that feeling to dominate me. I've got to be able to realize that, you know what, I am adequate and I am worthy of being able to achieve greatness or receive love, etc. And so there's so many different types of tools that we have in our shed that maybe we don't tell the world about, that could be so valuable to the world that they may not be aware of. And I'll go to the last piece of what you inspired, Dylan, and then I'm throwing the right mic right back to you. And that's when I learned about boundaries. I think I was 28, 29 years old. And I was learning about boundaries for the first time and realized like, wow, I have like no boundaries. This is really interesting. I can learn a lot here. But I was also suffering a lot because I didn't really get it. And now that I get boundaries, one of the strange correlations I've realized over the last year has been that oftentimes, if you are in a relationship with somebody who does not know how to respect boundaries, any type of relationship, friendship, an acquaintance, or a loved one, if you set a boundary, sometimes the people who you're setting the boundary with will gaslight you because of your boundary. And like I'm seeing it more and more this past year of like, oh dang, like some people don't feel attacked when you try to put a personal boundary up. Some people feel like you're pushing them out or away, and it's been a really strange process of trying to get to my next level of leadership while also building and cultivating great relationships, and then recognizing that people who don't understand boundaries may put up a defensive or a reactionary mechanism. I'm like, oh gosh, they don't teach you about these things. Anyway, it's all a long process. And so I share that openly for all of you, and also so that we can discuss it between Dylan and I, and the 7 Mirrors book that you have coming out that helps you unlock and find and identify your true self. I'm sure all of this can correlate in some way. Don't feel the need to force it, but Dylan, where do you want to go with this now that I've opened Pandora's box?
Yeah, I think boundaries they're so important, and there's a lot of levels to them too, right? And I think that you touched on it, right? What happens when you define the boundary and someone pushes on it, and they don't push on it in a clear way, right? But they question why you have them. Well, that's all the more reason to have them, and it's all the more reason to stick by them. But because when you start to talk from that place of my need is this, and I love this. I was introduced to this idea years ago, and so the way I see it, right, that life is not complicated. Many times we say, oh, it's a complicated thing. And it's simply because I think we're not willing to put ourselves through kind of the question answer to get down to the fact that we're talking about a very simple thing. We have a choice. We always have 2 choices. I don't believe in a gray area. If the gray area is this purgatory, right, where I refuse to make a decision. So, and the power of our decision is divine, is absolutely perfect. So what that comes down to, right, and what you're talking about is that in the world, I believe that we have a duty to develop relationships where there's a shared love. It doesn't mean a romantic love, right? It just means there are people in our lives who love us and who we love back. And that's where all of our energy should be. We may love a certain person and they don't give us love back. And again, love doesn't have to be overwhelming love. I mean,
Sure.
this is the relationship I have with you. But the reality is, it's like, if my boundary starts to degrade, if I chase you, if I love you and you don't give me love back, but I'm chasing something in you, or if it's vice versa,
Right.
if you love me, but I'm like, man, you're just not for me, then if I give my energy, I'm degrading that boundary for that. So that's where this comes into play, right? Your example of
Well
where
said.
they start to gaslight you, you've got to hold strong to that. And it can't be emotional at that point. It's very clearly, here's where I am, and I don't choose this. And you don't necessarily have to tell the other person that. I mean, there's lots of signals, but you have to hold to that. It can't be, here's where I am, and oh, I'm just going to give him a call. or, oh, he needs this from me, so I'm going to give it to him, right? Or her. And this comes up in these partnerships that whether it's a romantic partnership or whether it's a business partnership, where
Absolutely.
we're like, oh, well, once we start to enable, right, the other person, then we've lost the boundary. We've lost that ability to adhere to that thing. And you know what? It's not any more complicated than that. If we're going to make that decision, then and what it means is you start to make those decisions in your life. It's going to be uncomfortable. There are going to be people that push on that. But I encourage everyone to hold tight to that, because if you want what's on the other side of that, if you truly want the time for yourself, if you truly want those connections with other people in your life, then you have to make that decision. If you don't, then you're going to exist in that whirlpool. You're going to sit there and spin around, and you're going to be okay for a lot of people, but you're not going to be great for the people that you really want to have engagements with. But it's a tricky thing, I mean,
It is.
it's
Well,
a
and we get to
practice.
play with this live right now because
Yeah.
Dylan, there's a concept that you said, and I think my inner child was like, no. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't see things this way. And so you said life is not complicated. And my belief, I like to talk about how the human body is so complicated a doctor could study it for 30 years and still not know the
Mm.
first thing about it. And so my inner child was like, well, that's kind of extreme, Dylan. That's like extremely opposite. And then I thought about, I was like, you know what? And I don't like the gray area per se, especially with the context that you're putting on. I'm like, oh man, cool. This is helping me reconsider my own paradigms and my own
Mhm.
perspectives. And so I could unfriend you and block you and be like, you know what, let me just be like everybody else on earth and believe in my own polar opposite thought
Mhm.
process. But then I thought about, I was like, you know what, Dylan, for you, I renamed it. I renamed the extreme belief as an intentional belief.
Mhm.
Right? You've got this intentional belief for yourself that life is not complicated. And now I want to explore, what do you see as the difference between extreme versus intentional thinking? And do you want to go down that route, or do you want to talk about the
No.
seven mirrors? Your choice.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, they're tied together. I mean, I think that everything that we're
I
talking
figured.
about, honestly, yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to
Guys,
even
I've never
have,
read this book, but I'm getting
yeah,
closer and closer. Like, I got to get in to read this book. This guy gets it. He
yeah,
understands things. So
it's hard for me to even have a business discussion now that doesn't involve the practices that are in seven mirrors. I mean, I
yeah,
think that when you are, the reason why I say that it's simple is because the complicated part is nothing outside ourselves. It's what we make it, right? The complicated part is, oh,
sure.
well, if I do this, if I make that decision, it means this. So I'm not going to make that decision. Well, then you've overcomplicated it. But you just, me by saying that, I've decided the pathway. And maybe this is the kind of, ride the line between, the analytical and the creative side. And so I kind of see both those things, but it is a kind of a workflow. It's a chart of, well, if I do this, this happens. Well, okay, well, then I need to make that decision. Am I willing to go through the discomfort for this to happen for me to get what I want? If I'm not, then okay, well, then I'm back over here. Am I willing to live the prolonged discomfort of this to not receive what I want on the end of it? Well, maybe I am, but maybe I'm not. But it still comes down to these little decisions that we have to make. Some of
Right.
them are easy, some of them, are perceptually more difficult or more challenging. But it's not that, look, none of us have to like build a pyramid to make something happen, right? We've invented these stories in ourselves that prevent us from making a decision that very clearly, and that's why it helps, I think, to have, whether it's a mentor or a coach or a best friend who can be non-judgmental. You need this kind of
Yes.
non-judgmental, even keeled voice, someone who cannot be tied to the outcome and say, well, have you looked at it this way? Right?
I love
Because
having a
oft,
tribe of those people, by the
yeah,
way. A tribe of those people is where I
oftentimes
go.
oftentimes, that best friend or that coach can just say, well, I mean, the way I say it when I coach people, I'm like, are you willing to live with that for 10 years? Well, no. Okay, well, then your decision, you've already said clearly, is this, but I don't want to make that decision. It's like, you can't have both, right? You
Right.
can't not
Right.
make the decision. And so you can either sit in this for 10 years and never receive what you want, or you can simply go through this little bit of discomfort, and then have it. And it becomes
Yeah.
very clear. And but that's a part that I think that until we allow ourselves to get real with ourselves, we live in that whirlpool. We just live in that environment of,
Yep.
and it's helped obviously with distraction. So name your distraction. It's the, it's the watching too much, it's the eating too much, it's the sexing too much, it's the drinking too much, it's the whatever, it's the buying too much, it's the, whatever it is. But those distractions are never ending, especially for the business owners, right? This is why I think I fell into this trap. When you own a business, there's a steady amount of distractions. But here's the thing: you run the show, so you get to make the decision, or you can let that decision get made for you and never work it out. But the point is, once you do get real with yourself, these come down to very clear decisions that you can make for yourself.
Absolutely. And as I was meditating on our discussion today, Dylan, and I'm deep in thought, thinking I want to maximize my time. I want to maximize Dylan's time. I want to be able to extract the best for our audience as well. Some of the questions that came to mind were, how do you maintain work-life balance? How do you recover when you get off track again? And how do you overcome imposter syndrome and lean into the best that life has to offer? And what if you don't? Or what if you can't? What then? So there's some of the questions that came to mind that I was thinking about our conversation. And there's of course the Seven Mirrors book. We want to, again, let's go Seven Mirrors book style, and let's remember some of those questions that you and I have both faced as we've built. But how did you come about writing this book, and what are some of the secret sauces that you can reveal for us?
Yeah, so I'd started writing something for me. I'd never written anything longer than a few pages in college. And so, part of it, your imposter syndrome started with, who am I to write a book? Who's going to want to read
Right.
this? And what even is it? I had no concept of what it was. But here's the thing, it started too with me listening to other people. And I'll wrap a couple things into this. This imposter syndrome, if you act on behalf of yourself, and if you really get real with what you feel about something, then it's impossible for you to be an imposter, right? So I would argue the flip side, if you don't do that, then you naturally are an imposter. So to me, it kind of works itself out, right? If you get real and know, here's the thing, you will not be liked by everybody. I'm convinced, and I don't give it another thought, honestly. I'm sure, because I know the state of the internet, right? I'll publish the book, and I started with writing even blog items, and I was like, well, what if someone says this? Well, I don't care, because you know what? I wrote that from my heart, and I'm sure people won't agree with, somebody out there won't agree with this. And
Right.
I won't engage with that person, because at the end of the day, like, my duty is to engage with the people, back to what I just said, right? To engage with the people who don't necessarily agree with me, but who have something meaningful to say about what I've written. So I think the part about imposter syndrome is, I mean, it's a syndrome because of just that, right? We've invented that. Well, what if people don't like me? I need to be this way. Well, look, I spent years of my life being someone else because I thought that's what I needed to be for other people. And in reality, the beauty I found out is that no one expected that of me. Now when I reflect back, and even when I have these discussions with people who've known me for years, I'm like, they reinforce it. They're like, I never thought that's, first of all, I never expected anything of you. We place this power, we give people our power, right? We say, I need to be this way for these people, and it's an assumption. But once you just get real and say, this is who I am, at the end of the day, there's 8 billion people on the planet. You're going to connect with people. I don't care if you write a book or if you just want to have a new group of people, you're going to find your people. So just, wouldn't you rather be there?
Be you.
And be you?
And I was stuck for decades in the thought process that I needed to be the best rather than being my best. And so hopefully that unlocks some for some of you. And then Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's quote really helped me maximize that, where he said, some people don't like me, but some people don't have good taste. And I
Well,
was like,
yeah,
yeah, that's my quote
yeah,
from now
yeah.
on.
It's
So
perfect. Yeah,
I remind myself of that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's all right. And I'm
yeah,
happy with my cup of tea.
yeah.
So continue, Dylan. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and so I guess it started with as I started to write, I realized, well, if I'm going to write this, and that was one of the beautiful things about writing something. Once you start to understand something about yourself, I don't care if you write a book or not, but write it down. Because once I started to write things down, then I recognized, like, if you were to talk to me, Jackson, a couple years ago, yeah, I was still this person, but I have a conviction today about the things that I've written because I got the picture really quickly. I was like, holy, if I'm going to write this down, I got to be this. I
Yeah,
mean, because it was kind of
exactly.
interesting. It was like, it's not that I wasn't those things, but once I
Sure.
documented it, once I wrote the 10 commandments, I'm like, well, I got to live the 10 commandments, right? I need to be who I say I am all of the time. And don't get me wrong, I fail all the time. I've got
Thank
3
you.
kids, I've got a wife, and if they were sitting right there, they would be like, well, Dad, what about yesterday? But that's cool because I got
Mind you,
another opportunity to learn from that situation. But
fresh perspective.
yeah, so
Yep.
but I did get I was actually in a Temazcal, and the man leading for those who don't know what that is, it's a sweat
Yeah. What is
lodge, a native sweat lodge, and super beautiful experience, and super hot
that?
and very challenging. And this particular person led this in the Toltec tradition. And the Toltecs believe life cycles are in 13 years. And so each of the doors, which means every time they bring stones in, they close the door, it's about 10 minutes, and that's done 4 times. So after 52, because that's the end of the last cycle, they were essentially trying to align with people's ages. And JP looked at me and he said, you haven't raised your hand in any one of these doors. Well, how old are you? And I said, well, at that time I was 55. And he said, Dylan, and now
Are you
keep in
referring to
mind,
JP Sears?
no, no,
Okay, continue.
in San Miguel. Yeah. But he said, Dylan, he looked at me intently, and I didn't really know him that well. And so that's was more powerful to me. He said, Dylan, you're an abuelo. And I sat back because I didn't think I deserved that. I mean, so an abuelo, of course, in
Grandfather.
Spanish is grandfather, but it also means, man of wisdom, right? And basically someone that we look to provide information, a teacher. And and that even took me back more. And he looked at me and said, no, you have a duty. You're in the Toltecs believe you have learned, you are still on a path of learning, but now you are in a place where you need to teach people what you've learned.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what do I know? And he said, that's not important. You know things, you need to teach them, was basically the nut of it. And that really, Jackson, I got to say, that was the point at which I decided, right, to the decision that what I was doing had meaning. I just didn't know it yet. What I was
Mhm.
doing had a purpose. And that really kicked off, from that place it went from more of a hobby of writing to every day, investigating what that meant. And that led to essentially the 7 mirrors.
Wow, that is awesome. My friends, it has been such a privilege and honor to get to know Dylan behind the scenes. See him participate. I got to give a huge shout out to Dr. Lance Knob, who runs a mastermind on Thursdays that we now both go to and get to provide little advice or counsel or insights and hear other great people speak to that. So if you're listening in, feel free to join us over there on that as well. We'll have that in the show links. But it, I just feel there's always a superpower when we get to connect with the author behind the book. And we get to have that ongoing relationship where it's like, okay, your evolution regarding the 7 mirrors is going to continue too. Just like you
Mm-hmm.
said, as you learned about that abuelo experience, you're in 10 years, what you'll know or what you'll have uncovered for that is going to be different than what it is today.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to take the next few minutes to open the eyes of the individuals who maybe haven't had the chance to leave the United States before, or maybe haven't
Mm.
lived outside the United States. So I'm down here in Ecuador. I've been down here for 11 months at this point. And I spent 2 years in Uruguay, and you reside in Mexico. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're on vacation, U.S. side right now. We'll leave that where it's at. But in terms of Mexico, what what are some of the eye-opening experiences or benefits that you or your family have gained? And maybe what are some of the challenges that weren't anticipated for those who are considering the value of, let's call it world schooling, right? The value of getting out and seeing what else there is to offer out there.
Yeah, I think that the pros definitely far outweigh the cons. Maybe the biggest thing, because I'll start with the cons to get used to, was once you leave the U.S., especially in, I think, the south of the border, let's call it. So we started off in Costa Rica. Is that the pace of life is different. The interactions of government, and because of course you have the same things, whether it's driver's licenses or residency issues or these types of things, or the simplest of things take longer. The selection or the choice of shopping is less.
Hmm.
I actually, in really quickly though, found the beauty of that. Right, I
Yeah.
think that in the U.S., right there, we have things are so at our fingertips. We all know about Amazon, obviously, but we're so used to this instant gratification coming. There was
Consumerism.
an Yeah, there was an absence of that actually, it I don't even know if I felt, if friction was there, it was for a very short period of time, because I real quickly was like, oh, this actually feels better.
Mm.
And then more so in Mexico than in Costa Rica, only because there's much more culture in Mexico. But honestly, life got exponentially better, um, because I think it got more real. And what
Yeah.
that means is, you know, in the Mexican culture, what I found, and just living in that city, there was people are so welcoming, and it's such a family oriented environment, right? I mean, we're walking around town, and as a for instance, a really simple thing. I come to the US now, and I think people think I'm kind of crazy, but you know, you
Right.
address everyone all the time. You walk down the street and it's buenos dias, good morning, or good afternoon, or good
Yeah.
evening. And I mean, at literally every interaction, you do not go into a store. I mean, it's not that it's frowned upon, it just doesn't happen. You don't go into a store and just have a transaction. You engage with the people. And
Yep.
these little small things that happen throughout the day are
Mm.
so meaningful.
Yes, they are.
It's interesting how I go for a walk here. I'm in Tempe, Arizona, and people are on their phones, and it's what it is. They're walking their dog, and I'm like, "Good morning," and they kind of look at me like I'm strange, and that's fine. I love bringing that here, but it's like, to me, the cohesiveness of the families in Mexico. These people, they live with grandparents and with grandchildren, and if they don't live in the same
That's right.
house, they live very nearby. But even, you know, we've been accepted as family to many
Mm.
people in that environment. I have not really experienced in the U.S. I mean, and we
Yeah.
lived in the same place for decade, right? Two
Right.
decades, and
It's very
sometimes we didn't
different.
even know our neighbor.
Yeah.
Now we move in and we know literally everyone around us, and so that aspect of it. And on top of that, I think the air's cleaner and the food's cleaner. But I think but in reality, the environment and the culture is so beautiful, and has opened up more of an opportunity, honestly, for me to get to know my own family better. For me to, when I go to see extended family, for me, I've learned essentially from the Mexican people in many ways how to be with my own family.
Right.
How to,
Ah,
and that's a really beautiful thing. I mean, I can't stress it enough. I mean, I feel so fortunate. We took, at the time we left, we had a 10-year-old son. So he's lived now the majority of his life pretty much outside the US. And so he's not just the travel aspect of that, but his exposure to that way of living, that will be his standard. I mean, that's, he'll
yes.
grow up in this complete place of knowing, of acceptance, right? Because I think
Yep.
that's a big thing we're missing, is just our ability to accept the people around us, whoever they are, is so important.
Yes.
And that, to me, is that, if, as we learn to do that, because I do believe it's happening, as we learn to do that more and more culturally across the world, that will change the planet. like
Huge.
not the
I
division,
agree.
but the acceptance of each other.
Absolutely. I know that a lot of that's going to fall on my daughter's shoulders as well. My youngest is a Mexican citizen and a United States citizen. And her
Yeah.
parents speak two different languages, and so
Hmm.
she will have an opportunity, whether she wants to or not, to lead that cause.
Yeah.
And on that note, though, about Mexico, one of my absolute favorite memories was one of the most surreal and bizarre experiences of my life. I'm in this home with this family, and there's two brother-in-laws there, and cousins are in there, and they start doing this dance in the middle of the little bitty living room where they all start kind of like holding hands and going in and out, and it felt so awkward as an American who you don't touch hands really with people, but
Yeah.
here's two brother-in-laws that are holding hands with each other.
Hmm.
And then they're holding hands with the person who's not their wife, and the kids are going in between and all this too. And it's just like there's just this like essence of love then and acceptance, and like this is all part of a socially acceptable society. And I thought about, if this is happening in North America, people would
Hmm.
panic.
Right.
I should say North America, in the United States. There would be like a panic, like, what is this? What are you doing? Don't touch me, type thing. And so there's that. And then the people behind me here in Ecuador, there's a volleyball. There's two volleyball fields. There's about 100 to 200 people that come out every Saturday and Sunday. And I always go with $1. And I've done this for like 12 weeks now. So the kids come in and like they always know when I'm coming. They're like, oh my gosh. And that's like being Santa. I bring a freaking dollar, Dylan.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just $1 coin. I'm like,
Oh
who wants to
yeah.
help today? And they're like, me. All right. They're all trying to speak a little English. And I've taught the kids, like, okay, go find, go buy the little what do you call them? Dulces, the little
Hmm.
candies, and
Hmm.
go find all the kids that need candy. If you need
Yeah.
more, come back and give me another $1, right? So, on Saturday when I did that, I go back home. I went pretty late. I go back to my house on the other side, and about 10 minutes later, my doorbell rings. And the little boys that weren't there, they're like, "Come out, come out, come down." I'm like, I'm tired, but like, okay, I go down, and they just wanted to talk English just for a little bit. They just wanted to say hi. They just wanted to see what I was up to.
Hmm.
And that type of community building, like I'm the same guy that I was in
Yeah.
America, or in the United States, but
Hmm.
the interaction with the people is just so different,
Yeah.
in these parts of the world, and it opens up new areas of your soul. And there's business opportunities that can also come out of all this too. Not to
Hmm.
force the issue, there's vision opportunities that can come. And I think some people think that, oh, I have to be in New York City or San Francisco in order to be successful. And it's like, no, no, no. There's lots of opportunities all throughout the world for this. Last little plug, my friends, for opportunities, oportunidadeslatinas.com, opportunities for Latinos. We are now doing free websites, for people. It is so fun. It takes like 20 minutes to do it, thanks to Claude. And so now we're doing this project where we'll do 1 to 2 per week. So if you know somebody who would like a free website, let us know. We'll add them to the list. Obviously, this is going to fill up quite fast, with what exists, but and we're connecting them to our domain, opportunitieslatinas.com. That way, they don't have to pay for a domain. They don't have to worry about the
Hmm.
hassle. We don't have to worry about the hassle. And it's just a fun way to give back to entities that probably need it the most without having to put a whole lot of legwork for that I couldn't have done 6 months ago, a year ago,
Mm.
2 years ago. Couldn't even imagine doing this. And so just wanted to put that shout out there. I'm going to give the word back to Dylan for the last piece of advice, my friends. So Dylan, if this was your last chance to provide counsel or insight to other visionaries, what would your final words be?
Yeah, I think that everything comes back to honestly sitting with it, right? I think that whatever you're experiencing, definitely ask for help, but it starts with you sitting with that positive or negative, whatever that issue is, sitting with it long enough for you to hear what your body says about it.
My friends, you're seeing me practice that a little bit right now, and I'm going to go continue to practice that. It's beautiful advice. Limbo became one of the greatest opportunities of my life over the last year
Hmm.
and a half. And I was terrified of it. And it's not something to fear. It is it's a workout room of patience and growth. And so thank you for that, Dylan. This has been phenomenal. My friends, you can connect with Dylan Bost on LinkedIn. You can find the book, The Seven Mirrors, soon enough. It's coming out this year, correct, Dylan?
Yes. Yep.
Do we have a
It's
date for that yet?
I'll have a date later this week, but it's end of September, beginning of October. Yeah.
Awesome. And my friends, lastly, and of course, I would say most importantly, connect with the author. Go straight to the source. While he's got the ability, and while he's like, yeah, please, why doesn't have millions and millions knocking on his door right now, or the Guardians of the Galaxy kidnapping him like Kevin Bacon. Right. Oh, sorry. I just watched it yesterday. It was fun. Anyway, my friends, connect with Dylan. He's been a super friend. He's been a great mentor. I've seen him mentor and coach other tremendous leaders in Dr. Lance Knob's group as well. And as he let us know, and our great opportunity is to learn to sit with both the positive and the negative and allow our bodies to process and interpret what's there, and in anticipation for the seven mirrors. We will see you guys all on the next episode. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments. We'll be happy to reach out to you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention.